Taylor had not expected to feel so lost as he walked through those familiar doors. When she stepped through the door, every memory of Italy, the soothing waves, the wild pulse of romance, the underlying vibrations of betrayal, flooded back, engulfing her in a tidal wave of anguish and betrayal. She should have expected this. Ridge had been altered by what occurred overseas. Even from a distance, she could sense the difference in his tone when Brooke's name came up. But London fog, Venice canals and midnight roofs had created illusions of permanency that were both fleeting and terrible. As she stepped into the vast foyer, the faint sound of the bell announcing her return made everything feel hollow. First, Eric entered, the patriarch, ever-loyal father figure, his gaze somber. They didn't relax. When he said, they froze her blood. "Taylor, we need to talk." His deep and controlled voice concealed a colder tone. "After everything, you just need to pack your bag." It shouldn't have hurt so much, but hearing it revealed the truth she tried so hard to deny. Not a wish but a mandate. There are no arguments, no escape. She blinked, shocked, as if expecting the words to change into something more benign. Pack what? She eventually succeeded. Eric's demeanor remained bland and determined. He gazed behind her, down the long polished corridor that led to chambers she had not looked forward to returning to. Their shared bedroom, the study, and the living room that had once been a haven. Once. "It's over, Taylor," he replied in a lifeless voice. "Ridge and I have made our decision." Ridge appeared then, lingering in the backdrop of her view, drawn forward by Eric's voice. His expression was unreadable, tense, remote, and devoid of emotion. The same Ridge who had held her hand under Capri's starlit skies and murmured vows into her ear. As he stood across from her, he resembled a stranger she once knew. "Taylor," he began with caution, as if apologizing for the inevitable. We can't do this anymore." The room spun and she slumped onto the nearest chair, heart beating in her ears and breath strained. Her thoughts raced. Can't do what anymore? Why? She had accompanied Ridge to Italy, stood beside him in beauty and dread, and clung to him. She was now being exiled from her house. But did it ever belong to me? She stared at Ridge and Eric, man and father. Eric, who had smiled at her earlier and provided business advice, had always been a welcoming presence. Ridge was someone she trusted and liked. She sensed they had conspired long before they talked. "Did you ever really love me?" The words blazed like fire. "Why?" She managed to murmur it, her voice raspy. "Why are you doing this?" Ridge hesitated, swallowed, and looked down. His shoulders were rigid. We traveled to Italy for employment. But things changed." He looked at Eric, who nodded once. Ridge gazed back at her. "Brooke is the woman I'm meant to be with." Each phrase landed like a punch. Brooke. Another name. A rival who had always drained her soul. Ridge was choosing her. Taylor was racked with pain. Eric broke in softly. "We could not ignore it. You've been so dedicated, Taylor." However, Ridge requires something more. Taylor's vision clouded. She stood up and swayed. "So, that's it." The chair scuffed across the floor. "Pack my bag. Leave." She smiled, bitter and broken. "Is this how you end things? Just like that?" Ridge appeared pained but mute. Eric's expression softened, but he didn't give up. He looked at Taylor, as if expecting her to crumble. Maybe he underestimated her. Perhaps he'd always thought of her as his son's friend, loyal, sympathetic, and a safe harbor. Taylor took a hesitant breath. Her fingers grasped the edge of a side table, making her nails hurt. She thought, "Make it dignified." She squared her shoulders. "I will leave," she answered gently. "But know this, Ridge, you were once my destiny. You convinced me of that." Her voice trembled, but she rallied. "And Eric? You agreed with him. You did not let me stand. You stabbed me." Eric's eyelids fluttered. He looked to have aged for a second. Taylor turned aside and started walking down the corridor. She opened her phone, checking for messages, missed calls, and photographs she didn't want to view just now. She needed to breathe, to experience something other than sorrow. She paused in the corridor. 3 framed photos, of her and Steffi discussing the trip, of Ridge caressing her cheek before departing, and of Eric promising her that this was the end, which made her cry. "Don't wait up," she said behind her as she stepped into her packed suitcase near the door. She needed to recover her composure. There was a little suitcase there, already half-packed, ready in case she needed clothing. Ridge must have warned her about the risk. The betrayal was more painful because of its preparation. She stuffed in clothes, blouses she adored, pieces she'd worn when she still loved him and felt this could last. Her eyes welled up with tears, but she persevered. Eric looked quietly from the threshold. He hasn't spoken since giving the verdict. He appeared sorry but firm. Ridge remained in the background, squirming uncomfortably. She knew he wanted to soothe her, but he may have run out of words. Taylor swung the suitcase over her shoulder after it clicked shut. She took one last look around. The home remained silent. Furnished recollections mocked her. A vase she bought lay on a side table. A chair where they used to watch television. A desk chair next to a window where she had penned notes, doodles, and loving messages to Ridge. Gone, become meaningless. She moved toward the door. Ridge attempted to stop her. "Taylor, please," he pleaded, his voice cracked. She shakes her head. "No." Her voice was more stable now. "You made your decision." "You did." Her phone buzzed, possibly Sakura or Steffi texting, preferably with kindness. She opened the door and walked into the foyer. For a moment it felt like a stage. Eric and Ridge are watching her leave. Hearts beat painfully silently. She walked past them, the suitcase dragging on her arm like a wound. She paused in the entrance hallway. "This isn't goodbye," she explained softly. She did not wait for an answer. She stepped outside. Days have gone. Taylor rented a modest flat filled with painting tools. She submerged herself in work, paintings, sketches, and fashion ideas, trying to create something new out of grief. Steffi called her and offered comfort and company. "You don't have to go through this alone," her daughter explained. Taylor nodded, her voice raw. "I'm trying to breathe again." She also received a message from Brooke, which was not an apology but rather a longing note. "I do not want to hurt you," it stated. "This was never in my plans." Taylor left it unread. Meanwhile, Ridge's guilt gnawed at him. He and Eric had a tense meal. Ridge barely touched his meal. Eric watched him argue. Was this correct? Was he simply following his heart, or a single night of adrenaline in Italy? Ridge rummaged through Taylor's belongings, searching for answers, until the closet was empty. It was as if she hadn't been there. Taylor painted at her new apartment, her brush synchronizing with her heartbeat. Painful yet alive. She painted a dusk harbor with a solitary boat drifting freely, refusing to moor. The river reflected her agony, shattered but dazzling. Weeks have passed. Then Ridge called. Her heart has stopped. She paused, staring at the phone, her fingers quivering. She didn't respond. Then he texted. "Taylor, please. Talk?" She stared at it. She exhaled. And she replied back. "No." Instead, she painted, allowing color to permeate her grief and transform it into beauty. They met again at a gallery about a month or so later. Ridge and Brooke with the design crowd. Taylor at her own display. Their gazes met. Words unspoken, histories revealed. She gave a slight nod. He appeared struck. She turned aside, returning to her craft, her new home. Allow him to stay with what's left behind. The late afternoon light flowed into the Forrester living room, illuminating the enormous space with a pleasant glow that did nothing to calm the storm developing within. Ridge stood near the fireplace, his jaw tight and his eyes steely, as if the flames dancing on the hearth reflected the intensity of his rage. Eric's voice thundered across the room, reverberating with a weight Ridge hadn't heard in years. "Don't you try to walk away from me, Ridge." "Not this time," Ridge snarled at his father, nostrils blazing. "Do you think I'm walking away?" "No, Dad, I'm standing right here, listening to you defend her after everything she's done." His voice was low but charged, with a river of suppressed wrath coursing beneath each syllable. Eric stepped forward, his hands clenched at his sides, his normally measured tone shaking with emotion. "I am protecting what is right. I am defending this family, Ridge. Something you tend to forget whenever you get caught up in your own righteous anger." The words landed like an open-handed slap, and Ridge's lips curved into a humorless smirk. "Righteous indignation? What do you call it when I refuse to let someone maneuver their way back into our lives?" The sharp, unmistakable sound of heels striking marble echoed down the stairway. Taylor descended with a pallid face and defiant eyes. She wore a stylish ivory blouse that would have looked elegant in other circumstances, but tonight it made her appear even more out of place. She paused at the bottom step, casting her attention between father and kid. "So I guess I'm the someone you're talking about." Ridge's eyes sharpened, and there was a long oppressive stillness before he responded. "You went to Italy with promises to make peace. That is what you told me, Taylor. And now? I've heard from half of Milan that you were doing anything but making peace." Taylor lifted his chin. "If making peace means allowing Brooke to dictate every narrative, then I didn't. I advocated for myself, Ridge. I stood up for us." The word us hung in the air like a delicate ornament about to break. Eric's expression clouded, and his eyes shifted from Ridge to Taylor. "Don't you see it?" he asked her quietly. "You've been pushing, poking, and stirring the pot ever since you came back. This is not how we do things in this family." Taylor's laugh was brief and nasty. "Oh please." As if Brooke Logan had not spent decades stirring every pot she could find. However, when she does it, it is referred to as passion or determination. When I do it, it becomes a crime. Ridge approached her, his voice intensifying. "Do not make this about Brooke. This is about you and your choices in Italy. About cornering Hope at that press event, confronting Steffi in front of international partners, and making me look like a fool in front of the entire Forrester International team." Taylor's eyes flared. "I was defending Steffi. She was under attack by those tabloid vultures, and you were too busy wooing investors to notice." Eric's voice went through like a whip. "Enough. Both of you." Neither of them looked at him. Ridge was now only steps away from Taylor, his words low and deliberate. "You jeopardized our family's reputation. Do you have any idea how many calls I've had to field since you returned? And now Dad's stuck in the middle, supporting you when he should be just as enraged." Eric's jaw tightened. Then his gaze softened as he settled on Ridge. "I am not defending her actions, Ridge. I am saying you do not get to decide who belongs here. That is not your call." Taylor crossed her arms, her face a mix of triumph and hurt. "Do you hear that?" Ridge turned abruptly toward Eric, his voice quivering under the pressure. "Your father doesn't believe I should be tossed out like trash just because I made some people uncomfortable. She lied to me. She informed me she was traveling to Italy to improve our family's image and keep the peace. Instead, she focused on her grievances. So you're telling me she still belongs here?" Eric took a slow breath, his voice steady yet tinged with regret. "Yes, Ridge. She belongs here unless I say otherwise. And right now, I'm not ready to send her away." Ridge laughed bitterly. "Then maybe I should be the one to leave." Taylor's poise wavered, and a flash of panic crossed her face. "Ridge, do not do this. You are overreacting. We can repair this." But Ridge shook his head, his expression icy. "No, Taylor. You had a chance to correct things in Italy when it counted. Instead, you splashed fuel on every fire you could find." Eric stepped forward, his voice rising once more. "Ridge, you aren't leaving this place because of her. We will deal with this as a family," Ridge said, his eyes as keen as glass. "A family? This does not feel like family right now, Dad. This feels like you're choosing her over me," Taylor said softly, almost imploring. "Nobody is taking sides, Ridge. Ridge interrupted her, his voice booming. Do not try to twist this. You've been playing your angles since you returned from Italy," whispering into Steffi's ear. "Pushing Thomas into decisions he isn't ready for." Taylor's lips quivered, but her voice remained calm. "If telling the truth is undermining Brooke, then maybe she deserves it." Eric slammed his fist onto the arm of a chair, surprising them both. "Enough. This isn't about Brooke." Ridge turned on him, his voice trembling. "It is always about Brooke. You are already aware of this. Taylor understands this. That's why she went to Italy in the first place, to make herself appear like the superior option. And now she's standing here, acting innocent." Taylor's eyes sparkled, tears forming but not dropping. "Ridge, you think the worst of me. You always have. No matter what I do or how many times I attempt to prove myself, you always find a way to make me the villain." Ridge's shoulders rose and fell with his heavy breathing. "You've made yourself the villain this time, Taylor. And I'm done pretending otherwise." Eric's voice, softer now, had a weight that silenced them both. "I have seen this before. I've seen both of you rip into each other until nothing remains but bitterness. But I refuse to let it destroy this house. Taylor gulped hard. Then tell him I'm not leaving. Eric held her stare for a long, heavy minute before replying. I already have. However, this does not mean that things will return to normal. There are consequences for what happened in Italy. Ridge crossed his arms, his voice as frigid as the marble beneath their boots. Then start with the most serious consequence. She leaves tonight. Eric's voice sharpened. That is not your decision to make. Ridge looked at him for a long, anxious time before turning to face Taylor. Taylor's breath caught as she said, Pack your things. Ridge. Pack. Your things. His remarks were tight and final. Eric stepped between them, his presence imposing. She's not going anywhere tonight. Ridge's eyes flared, and it appeared like he might shove past his father. But suddenly something changed in his look, either resignation or tiredness. Fine, he answered finally, his voice a hoarse snarl. But if she stays, I'm gone. He turned on his heel and went toward the door, the sound of it slamming behind him ringing throughout the home. Taylor stood there, her heart beating in her ears, while Eric collapsed into a chair and rubbed his temples. You've just made everything worse, he remarked gently. Taylor's voice crackled. I didn't mean to, Eric said, his eyes tired. Intentions aren't important right now. All that matters is that you've put Ridge in a situation where he feels compelled to choose. And when Ridge is forced to make a decision, nobody wins. Taylor turned away, peering out the window as the last light of day faded over Los Angeles. The shadows in the room darkened, mirroring the gravity that now hovered between them. She and Eric did not communicate again. The city lights in the distance began to flicker on, oblivious to the Fishers emerging inside the Forrester house.